Welcome, everyone. Welcome to May 1st, ThursdAI. A lot has happened this week, so we're going to talk very fast, and hopefully we'll cover everything because a lot has happened this week, starting with a very sad event that we will cover in a second. Yes, GPT4 has been officially RIP'd. Rest in prompted. And we're going to cover this, and we're going to have a moment of wake for GPT4, because many who follow us know that GPT4 was the start of ThursdAI. We were born on the same day, May 14th, 2023. That's when ThursdAI started. We're going to have a little wake for GPT4 and invite some people to write some words in the comments. With you, Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist with Weights and Biases. I've been doing ThursdAI for more than 2 years. With me, our co-host, Wolfram Ravenwolf, all the way from Germany. Hey, Wolfram.
Hello, everyone.
Yam Peleg is with us. Hey, Yam. And Nistan Tahira. So we're an international crew here. Yam is in Israel. Nistan is in Canada. Wolfram is in Germany. And I'm in the not so cold anymore Colorado in Denver. And we also have an international crew of folks joining us from all over the world. All right, folks. I think it's time for us to get started with the TLDR. First of all, I think we'll do the wake afterwards. So folks who are joining for the GPT-4 wake, I think we'll wait a little bit. This week has been a crazy week. And I think we did something last time. Although we don't have that much time today, I'll be very punctual with the clock. We have a lot to cover. We may have Jun Yang join us from Qwen, which I believe was the biggest open source of this week. Last time I went around to just ask my co-hosts, what do you guys think what was the one highlight of AI for you guys? And while my co-hosts answer this, I invite everybody in the audience also to comment and tell us what was the one thing. Maybe we missed it. Maybe it was a huge thing. How about we start with Wolfram? What is the highlight of your week?
Definitely Qwen 3, because this model does it all. It's an amazing model. We will talk about it in more detail. I'm running my benchmarks, and I'm loving it. Great work.
Qwen
that was
3,
the most exciting
absolutely.
for me.
Jan, what was your highlight this week?
Oh, definitely Qwen 3. Absolutely amazing model. These numbers are unheard of. You can argue if they translate well to vibes and so on, but numbers themselves are unheard of for these sizes. And it's just amazing to see every new release, a smaller model gets to the same performance as the largest models. And you think, okay, that's the end. We're not going to get a 7B better. No. And then a new team just pops up out of nowhere and just put it on Twitter, have fun and enjoy. And it's every single time, like every month, something like this happen. And really makes you think, like, what's the limit of those models, of the small models? Like, how far can we push them? And it's also really hard to even measure the limit, even measure how hard it is. It's all vibes from here all the way down at this moment. Yeah.
It's
like Qwen 3.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Qwen 3 for us as well. Nistan, how about you give us something that's not Qwen 3? If you have. If not, it's also fine. If all of us are excited about Qwen 3, that's great.
The new VLLM release, they fixed a lot of the CPU offloading, which makes it very good for running Qwen 3.
Yeah, it's also sounds Qwen 3 related.
So besides Qwen 3, my most used model has been Qwen Coder 32B until now. I'm glad to have something else. But this one just flew under the radar. It's the new Alma model 1B, and that beats the older Qwen 2.5, 1.5B. That's a very nice, very small model, and it's one of the only ones where you have complete access to all the data and the training logs. That's from our friends at Allen. And yeah, I would say that is something that flew under the radar. There is also another voice thing, which I'm just looking up because I don't remember.
All right. I will say the highlights are usually good things, but also notable things. For me, notable is GPT-4 is no longer with us. As I said, we're going to have a wake in a bit, but I think it's time to jump to the TLDR section because, as always, we have a lot to run through. For folks who are busy, we're doing the TLDR where you can see everything we're going to talk about with the links. We're going to run through it super quick this time and then hopefully jump into open source. Let's do TLDR one of these days. Alrighty, folks, we are in the TLDR section. A lot has happened this week, starting with open source LLMs. Alibaba drops Qwen 3, which is just a huge release. Like models across the board, there's 2 huge MOEs, mixture of experts, and also 6 dense models, starting with a very tiny 0.6 billion, 600 million parameters Qwen. It's useful for some things, completely babbling, all the way up to 30 billion parameters. We're going to hopefully have Junyang Lin with us if he's able to join. In a surprising release, yesterday, Microsoft released Phi-4 with reasoning. That was new and exciting. We covered Phi from the first one. We covered tiny stories, why the synthetic data is great for models, and now they're releasing a reasoning model as well. Xiaomi also released a model called Maimo. It's also a huge Chinese company, and we should at least mention that they are releasing MIT as well, which is very interesting that most of the Chinese models are coming out with open source. And Qt AI, which we remember from the voice models, Mochi, released 2 billion parameter Helium-1. I believe that's most of the open source news. DeepSeek released a prover, like a huge prover that's very interesting for specific math, but not necessarily wide appeal. And there's a few more folks, but because this week was huge, this is like the main thing. GPT4 is no longer with us. You cannot find it in dropdown. You cannot use GPT4. You cannot send inference. Not that you had for the past year and a half, nor did you have a reason to. But GPT4 started a revolution, and we will do a wake immediately after this once we get to the big companies and the APIs. Google. You guys remember we had the folks from Google, we had Raisa, Abu Bakr, and Steve talking to us when Notebook LM launched, way before it became viral. Notebook LM now does the AI overviews, the podcasty overviews of everything that you want in multilingual. It does them, I believe, in 50 languages, and they sound dope. Meta had their LlamaCon, a convention specifically dedicated for Llama, where everybody expected a new model. They released a bunch of mini tangential security models like Llama Guard. They also talked about Llama and Llama 4. Zuck went on the Dwarkesh podcast and gave some replies on why Llama started on LMArena as number 1, and then what we got is not number 1. But yeah, we have some news from LlamaCon, and some folks in the audience will give us some news as well. I actually wasn't there. Looking forward for an invite next time to be able to cover LlamaCon. And one of the biggest pieces of news for this week was GPT glazing update. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the word glazing. I wasn't until Sam Altman tweeted it out, but basically sycophancy is a thing. It's where the model basically is not able to tell you anything constructive. It also barely tells you anything constructive. It just agrees with everything you say and highlights everything you say as though you're the king and you pay it. For the past 2 weeks, many of the community noticed this behavior, including reaching out to the folks in OpenAI and saying, hey, this is just incredible. I told it I did one push-up. And then it went on how amazing I am, one like top of the population, something like this. We'll definitely cover what went wrong there because it was so bad that OpenAI not only admitted it, OpenAI rolled back a release, which I don't remember for the past 2.5 years doing this. I don't remember them rolling back anything ever. Maybe they did this quietly, but here they also went on an AMA, head of behavior, Juan Zhang, went on it with Reddit. And yeah, we will talk about the behavior change and how it affects 500 million people now. Next up, Chatbot Arena is under fire. Folks from Cohere released a paper called Leaderboard Illusion, where they claim that the way Chatbot Arena is built is actually favoring the bigger labs. And then there's a response from LMArena, and some community members like Maxime Lebon responded back. We're going to chat about this because we've had our qualms with LMArena as well. We love to tell you which model is the best one. This is part of what we do here on ThursdAI. It's very interesting that there was this paper, and we should definitely discuss this. Also in big news, ChatGPT will do shopping for you. They combine with Shopify. They will now do shopping according to this. I just started realizing how much ChatGPT knows about me. I don't think there is a service on the internet. I honestly don't think that my mom knows as much about me as ChatGPT. In this week's Buzz, a category where I cover things that happened in Weights and Biases, I want to tell you again that we have a hackathon coming up May 17th and 18th in San Francisco. The hackathon is together with Google. Google is a representing sponsor for this hackathon. The hackathon is going to be MCP and A2A, the protocols that we both covered them. We covered A2A with Todd Segal from Google, one of the core developers of the protocol. And we covered MCP with Jason Neen and Dina Kozlov, who's in charge in Cloudflare. We will invite all of the developers from around the world. If you want to fly in, if you're in San Francisco and the Bay Area, you're more than welcome to join our hackathon. Would love to see you there. The hackathon is called Weave Hacks, and you can look it up on Luma. We'll definitely add a link to this in the show notes as well. In the vision and video, finally we're getting to where I really want this whole thing to be. Runway added references, and references are also available on the free plan. References allow you to generate character consistent video throughout frames, which looks quite incredible. And this has been the bane of like video generations. You can create incredible scenes, maybe even based on your own video, but then the consistency for the next frame is not there. Runway is trying to solve this, and that's super cool. We definitely should look at that. I believe covered HiDream before, but in AI art and diffusion, there's a new contender in open source called HiDream. It does Ghibli as well. HiDream E1, and that is an open source model. We should at least mention this as well. I think that in agent tools and interviews, we will have an interview with the friends of the pod, Hamel, Husain, and Shreya Shankar, specifically because Shreya released something called Prompt Evals this week. They also have an upcoming course in which yours truly is a guest speaker. I would love to chat with them about evals, LLMs, the upcoming course, and Prompt Evals work. This is a catch-all category for me. OpenPipe, our friends of the pod as well, released ART-E, an open source RL-trained email research agent that they claim does a better job than O3, which is very interesting. We may invite Kyle at some point to chat about this with us, but absolutely something to talk about as well. Folks, I think it's time for us to get started because the show is long. We have a lot to cover. Let's get started with our favorite corner. Open source AI. Let's go. Open source AI. Let's get it started. I think the biggest news that we need to cover this week is the release of one of our definitely favorite friend of the pod labs out there, Alibaba. The Qwen team in Alibaba specifically bestowed upon us an Apache 2 series of models called Qwen 3. We've been following Qwen for a long time, since Qwen 1, Qwen Coder, there's a bunch of releases, QVQ, QWQ, all of the great stuff. And now Qwen 3 is a full stack of open weighted models. 2 MOE giants, 2 mixture of expert giants. One is 235 billion parameters with only 25 billion active parameters. And the other one is a 30 billion parameter with only 3 billion parameter active. And then 6 dense models ranging from 0.6 billion all the way to 30 billion parameter, all shipped under Apache 2 license with day one support. I don't know if you guys saw this, but they want support for literally everything that can run a Qwen. LM Studio, our friends, Ollama, MLX, VLLM. They also trained them for MCP and mentioned MCP specifically in the release notes. Let's talk about this, folks. I want to highlight one more thing, then we should absolutely discuss this. They're also hybrid thinking models. They're reasoners. So we had the reasoner before. I believe Qwen was the first open source reasoner with WQ before DeepSeek. These models are hybrid reasoners, which we talked about on the show. Sam Altman announced that they're going to go there, and they didn't go there yet. So the OpenAI models are not hybrid. Claude, Gemini Flash 2.5, which was released last week. We should probably also mention this. It was released after a show, literally on Thursday, but after a show. So we'll definitely mention Gemini 2.5. That's a hybrid reasoner as well. You can specify reasoning. This, I believe, is one of the second. NVIDIA Nemotron was also a hybrid reasoner. But this one has a thinking switch that you can enable mid-prompt. Nista, I know you noticed this for sure. The user can pass, I want you to think more. So that's super cool. They released both MOEs and non-MOEs. Yam, would you want to take this one and discuss the MOE approach versus non-MOE approach and a few of the evals? Then we can chat about evals as well.
Look, there is a lot to discuss. I think supporting everything since day one is a lesson learned from Llama, probably. From the Llama release that had its own issues not long ago. I think it was the first thinking model coming from Qwen, first open source. Today, we take it for granted, like it's expected. Zach also said on the podcast that Llama 4 is going to get thinking in this year. What I want to say is it's important to consider the size of the models and what they compete against. On the Qwen release, tiny models are competing with O1 on several benchmarks. That's incredible. Even the smaller models are how did they even do this? It's the pinnacle of like pushing the model to the extreme. You can invite everyone to just go and read the technical materials about how it was done. Nissan said it before. Qwen Coder was model and one of a kind. There wasn't any model of this size with this performance open source. Those things coding models that you can run yourself locally, even if they're not the state of the art, are like local copilots, which is a massive unlock that you can use yourself. It's just amazing to see. Anyone wanna take the MOE versus not MOE number of parameters, because there is something about there as well worth mentioning.
Before we get to number of parameters, one thing that you asked that we should also mention, the number of training tokens. It's a massive, if I'm reading this right, 36 trillion tokens, which is insane. We've been talking about the number of tokens growing as well. 36 trillion tokens, twice as much as Qwen 2.5. They have PDF extraction that they use Qwen 2.5 VL for, synthetic math and code that they generated with Qwen 2.5 math encoder. Like both these great models that we know and love, they did synthetic training for this new model. It seems that kind of like the loop that we're talking about, that like the previous models will generate synthetic data for newer models become better and include this. It's what we're seeing right now with the Qwen model. You want to talk about size parameters? We can chat about this as well.
It is actually similar to the DeepSeek Coder model. When Coder V2 came, it was pretty revolutionary. That was around 220B, or so this is around 235B with the same number of active parameters. So that was one of the first very good models that you could run on a CPU, because you could do 11 tokens per second. So the sizing on this is roughly similar to that. And I don't know why they moved away from that towards something bigger, because it's pretty ideal, for example, if you have a Mac or if you have a CPU, but also for people serving this stuff in production, because you can parallelize a lot of their requests so much. So it actually ends up being a lot cheaper when you just throw a lot of GPUs at it. It is fantastic. The Qwen models have always been good workhorse models, we would call them, since Qwen 1, the 70B, and they're also very easy to fine tune. This one's getting all the math questions, all the tricky physics questions that I throw at it. It's getting them perfectly. It can vibe code somewhat. It's still not Sonnet at vibe coding. Nothing beats Sonnet at vibe coding, but it's not like it's that far off.
At home.
Yeah, I think it is definitely Sonnet 3.5 at home. I tested it with all the tool calls, and it is doing all the tool calls well. I tried the 4B. I had early access to the 0.6B. That was out for a good 3 weeks, and I never actually. They even had another small MOE, which I don't know if they actually released that one. But that one was scoring crazy scores. They trained this big model, and then they distilled all the tiny models. I'm pretty glad that they released all of the work, because you often see with shops that they train a whole bunch of smaller models and bigger models, and then they only release the ones that do well in the benchmarks. They released all of it, and they're all great. So right now, I'm using it with the Fireworks API. I was able to run the MOE one myself, and that one ran on a single H200 for $1.50 an hour. It runs at 14 tokens per second, which is okay. It could do better. You can also just own the model too, because the license allows you to do that.
Apache 2?
Yeah.
I want to add, Yam, to something that you said. The efficiency math here is crazy. The MOE bases, they hit parity with Qwen 2.5 while activating 10% of the parameters. Qwen 2.5, which was released 4 months ago, 5 months ago, I can't really remember. We were celebrating that model. That model is now the base of many fine tunes, many folks running Qwen 2.5 based stuff. And a lot of the reasoners, if you remember, when reasoning came out, RL came out, it was a big thing. Many people trained on GPRO and like all of these things. They used Qwen 2.5 like multi-models. 10% of the active parameter is all it takes now to get to the same level of quality of Qwen 2. 235 billion, the MOE, the big one they released, matches or exceeds DeepSeek R1. DeepSeek R1 broke the stock market when it came out, because there was, oh my God, GPT4 at home. It's half the parameters. DeepSeek is 560 something parameters, if I remember correctly, the MOE. This one is less than half the parameters and matches or exceeds the model that we all thought is the crazy state of the art. Only in January, it broke through the bubble. It matches O1 and O3 mini in multiple things, right? Especially in math things. Grok 3 and Gemini 2.5 on coding and math as well. And the highlight for me is the 4 billion parameter dense model beats Qwen 2.5 72B. 4 billion parameter model beats the previous highlight of 72B instruct on multiple things. We keep talking about having these models at home for privacy sake, for performance speed, maybe not so much because they run like crazy on VLLM. Definitely for privacy sake, definitely for doing your own thing, fine-tuning especially. 4 billion parameter model gets very close there. Let's talk about the reasoning. Wolfram, I would love to chat with you about your vibes around this model, your vibes from the community, but also the reasoning stuff. The fact that these are like hybrid reasoners. We would love to open this up because I think it's very important.
The reasoning is especially important and interesting because when OpenAI was announcing their open source model, a lot of the people who were there wanted a non-reasoning model. So it's faster and doesn't use so many tokens. Now Qwen has shown us that you can have both. You can have a way to disable the reasonings. I expect from OpenAI now to match that as well, to give us an MOE model.
You remember
which is
last week we chatted with Maziar, who went to the OpenAI event. And Maziar specifically said that the community reacted to them and said, hey, please give us the ability to turn off reasoning. He wasn't the only one. This was the sentiment from the community.
Now we have seen how easy and well done it can be. The MOE approach means we can run it faster, because we don't have as many active parameters, which is important when you are reasoning because you are generating so many more tokens. So that is also an aspect that is here. And that is the great thing. We not just got a big model like DeepSeek did, but we also a smaller one, which we can run locally. I can run it on my MacBook. And it doesn't take much. It has so many contexts. It's super fast. And the quality is excellent. So what they did is not just deliver an amazing model, but deliver an amazing model everybody can use. Depending on your heart, if you have a supercomputer, you can run the big one. Since we mentioned Sonnet at home, I tested at Fireworks, the Qwen, the big one, the 235B, active 222B, the active one. It was directly between Claude 3.5 Sonnet and Claude 3.7 Sonnet in the MMLU Pro. On my own system, I got a score of 80% in the MMLU Pro. That was just a Q4 4-bit of the 30B for active 3-bit. It got a good score, and it's running locally. I've never seen such a good score on a local model. That is absolutely amazing. They delivered a top model that you can run everywhere on your phone. The small one doesn't get a good score. The small one is 0. That only got a score of 30, 40 something. So that wasn't super, but that is to be expected. But the big one, that is great.
We have a shout out from Fernando Neira, a friend of the pod, also an ML researcher, that says, worthy paying attention to the depth of the 30 billion MOE. It's deeper than 8B and 14B as well. All right, let's talk about evals, folks. On artificial analysis, GPK Diamond, Qwen 3, the top one, the 234 billion parameter, is landing above Gemini 2.5 Flash, which we also should mention came out since we chatted with you guys last week, and above Llama 4 Maverick. Zach is in shambles right now. But I think the reaction from Zach is specifically the Llama is multimodal and these models are not multimodal. So no multimodality, but multilinguality, support for 119 languages in these Qwen models, which is also very impressive. I chatted with it in Hebrew and in Russian, and it works well. Nistan, you had a comment?
I think the star of the show here is the 30B MOE with only 3 billion active parameters. People are getting 100 tokens per second on their MacBooks. You're getting close performance to the big one, but it's just way faster. It's 30 gigs on disk, and you're only using 3 gigs of them at a time in memory, or half that if you're running it in 4-bit. People are getting crazy speeds on that. I think that's the most democratized form of intelligence right now, because in 4-bit you only need 16 gigs, more like 20 gigs of VRAM to actually run it. You can buy a GPU now for less than $1,000 and have this extremely capable, was extremely fast user experience. It's fast.
100 tokens per second locally is crazy.
Yeah. So this is,
and it's super cheap. Even the big one on Fireworks cost me just 15 cents for the full MMU Pro's computer science benchmark. That is 1 million token. So very cheap.
Look, I didn't have time to test it myself, but seriously, Sonnet at home? You really feel this way, guys?
I feel that way with the bigger model. The annoying thing is that I started using the bigger one and I really like it. So now I do notice the difference when I use the small one. You just want to use the best. So if you're going to try any of this, just try the 30B MOE. Don't try the other one, because then you're always going to want the other one.
There's a lot of stuff in there that is hard to just get by talking. So vibe coding, for example, I've seen a few examples of folks like trying to build like interfaces. Sound just gives an incredible one where Qwen does something, but it's not comparable. I've seen a few examples. As always with these models, some folks will not like them. I would point out that there is a few folks who tried and got different results on local llama. However, like the thing to highlight is all of these models are Apache 2 license. All of them are fine-tunable. The community is going to come out and fine-tune. Already folks started doing this. Their reasoning, so for tasks like math and code, they're great. They're absolutely great. And you can like absolutely turn off reasoning if you don't want to. Just
to highlight that for the viewers, the turn off reasoning is just /no thank. That's all you need to do. Oh, and just to address any fights, not fights in the community, but arguments as to who first invented dynamic reasoning, I posted that Qwen finally solved it. And technically, the QBQ model has solved it. Hermes 3 also included it.
Yep.
The Hermes 405B release had both thinking and reflection tokens that you could turn on and off in the model. Yeah, so that part of the post, don't take that as absolute, but this is one of the best implementations.
Somebody commented that no think will turn off thinking, and then /think will turn it on back again. So in the middle of the conversation, you can give your users the ability to turn on and off thinking. I don't remember any other models doing this with this specific thing. That's great. I foresee this coming everywhere. Last thing that I want to mention here, folks, we've been hyping up Qwen 3 for a while. They have support for MCP. Do you guys remember when we looked at the Qwen interface, there was an MCP button there? I think you noticed that it's not live yet. However, the folks in China, if you look at Model Scope, which is the Hugging Face for Chinese models as well, they have an MCP registry in the Model Scope thing. Very interestingly, Hugging Face doesn't have one, but Model Scope does not give an F. And there's like a bunch of very specific Chinese MCP servers as well. So China ecosystem picks up MCP in a big way. And this is a great example because they specifically mentioned that they've trained MCP selection on these models. MCP selection is a little bit different than tool calling. These models have like specifically mentioned they have a built-in MCP schema, and you can pair them with their Qwen agent, which they have a free version on GitHub for tool calls. Not a lot of models have been trained for MCP specifically besides Claude and now Qwen.
You're gone.
I believe that I heard from folks that after they released MCP and started seeing a big deal, Claude has some updates. But I may be wrong. But Claude has some like more of understanding what MCP would be, because they've been working on MCP way before they released it. And by the time they released it, they wanted a good experience. I believe 3.7 maybe has a little bit more than 3.5.
I would like to add something.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Because tool calling is very interesting. The consensus seems to be, and I've noticed the same, that the word knowledge of the model is a bit lower than we would expect, while the intelligence is very high, which is interesting from an agentic perspective. A lot of my clients have always asked me, how can I make the AI forget a lot of things? It should just answer what we have in the rack, and we don't want it to talk about world events or stuff. So maybe that has been not a drawback, but actually a feature of this model. When you are using it in such a context, you want the information from the context to be what the model interacts with, and not so much background knowledge, which could confuse it. So maybe that is not even a bad thing, but a good thing. And yeah, we have a lot of options for fine tuning, so stuff can be inserted back in again. And that is a great thing about Qwen, because it is now a base. We will see so many fine tunes, I'm sure of it. And that is a bit sad that is not happening with Llama, because that is what Meta's role was or used to be. They released the models in different sizes and everybody could use them and build so many. That's how the whole ecosystem was created. And now Meta passed in the way to the Chinese that are taking over this.
That was a big feedback as well on the Meta Llama 4 release, where we are used to smaller models that we can run ourselves, fine-tune ourselves, and enjoy them at home. And then what's the point of open sourcing models for the community when you cannot run them? You need to run them in the cloud anyway. I wanted to highlight this last thing before we move on, folks. I had a run of evaluating on my machine. This is the first model that I literally used LM Studio. I don't know why I blanked on this incredible piece of software. LM Studio came out with first day support for Qwen models. Shout out Bartowski and the LM Studio community for releasing the quantized version. I ran the Qwen 30B with 3 billion parameters locally, and then I ran it through my Weave evaluation dashboard. This is the model. It gets 43% of the 20 super hard thinking questions from AI explained. As you guys know, like the Beth High School question, we always test thinking models for them. Reasoning models is significantly better. This model, the 30 billion parameter with only 3 billion active, is very close to other models. It's by far the highest one that I ran open source. And on this test specifically, it beats GPT 4.1 mini and 4.1 nano. It gets very close to 4.1. This is a model with 3 billion active parameters that learns at home. And on this reasoning test, it answers way better. Not to mention the long dead GPT-4 and like all of these things. The surprising thing though, is you can see the average latency graph. It was a long time because it ran on my machine. It took a while for this model, right? I didn't do the optimizations. One last thing that I will say, if you run LM Studio, which I think I have open, let me see if I have open LM Studio. I'll open it up. If you run this model in LM Studio, you should know that because of the incredible thing, Llama didn't have this as well, by the way. If you run this model, you can use speculative decoding to speed that even more. And we chatted about speculative decoding multiple times at this point. I want to show you how that looks in a second.
You can use smaller models of Qwen. Oh, yep. I didn't think about it.
You can use even the 0.6 billion parameters because all you want from speculative models is the ability to think ahead of the model. I have the 30 billion parameters with the 3 active billion parameters running. When you run this with speculative decoding, you can see how many of the tokens are green. The green tokens are coming from the very tiny model. So it's 3 billion parameters anyway, but I just ran this at 57 tokens per second. AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. Oh, we have breaking news. Yam, tell us.
All right, so coming from Claude.ai. Today released integration of remote MCPs and an advanced version of Claude Research 5 minutes ago.
That's so cool. So Claude.ai, so far, Claude only had MCP support in the Claude desktop app and Claude Code. And now you're saying they have a release for remote MCPs. This is huge. This is huge. Let's take a look at this. Anybody want to pull Claude up? Because anybody pay for it? I don't pay for it yet. I should. I know the deep research is great, but I haven't paid for it.
I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah, so here's the tweet topic. Today we're announcing integrations, a new way to connect your apps and tools to Claude. We're also expanding Claude's research capabilities with an advanced mode that searches the web, your Google Workspace, and now your integrations too. Integrations, you can connect Claude to Asana, Intercom, Linear, Zapier, and more. Our developers can create their own tools as little as 30 minutes. That's, I think, their wing to MCP, which they don't mention on the release. But look at the folks that are integration launch partners: Zapier, Stripe, Atlassian, Asana, Linear, Square, GitLab, Cloudflare, PayPal, and more. Claude now automatically determines when to search and how to deeply investigate, which we know that from O3 does as well. Both integrations and research are available today in beta for Max, Team, and Enterprise plans. We'll soon bring both features to the Pro plan as well.
The Pro plan, they're going to make me buy the $100 one. All right.
Yeah. MCP is supported now on the online portal, which is so cool. All right, folks, this is breaking news from Anthropic. If you have the Max tier and you want to tell us how your experience is with this, please do in comments. We're moving on. We're still on open source. We still have a lot to cover. Let's quickly move on to the next thing that we should mention, Phi-4 with reasoning. This came out literally just yesterday evening.
It doesn't end Phi as well.
Yeah. So Phi-4 came out with reasoning. Microsoft released this, I believe, including a tech report as well. I want to see which license they have here. Let's take a look. Developers, architecture, inputs, context length with 32K tokens. So folks who are listening, I'm looking at the table of facts about Phi, and they're saying that the training data for Phi was only 16 billion tokens.
That's the reasoning fine-tuning. It's way more than that. It's trillions of tokens to train the whole model.
Yeah,
but
the
reasoning tool, I think they said it was from O3 Mini that they generated the 16 billion reasoning chains. Yeah, that's the fine-tuned data set. That's not the full.
Because this doesn't make sense. The dates that they trained this model is from January 2025 to April 2025. So obviously after DeepSeek, everybody started training reasoning as well. Phi-4 has a model card and basically a technical report as well. They took the lightweight 14 billion. I love that we're calling, like, we just mentioned the Qwen has 0.6 billion and now Microsoft is claiming the 14 billion is a small model. Phi was small when it came out. It was like 3 billion parameters. We celebrated this and then it blew to 14 billion. But they added a 1.4 million teachable chain of thought traces on top and then added 6K RL math problems as well. And now they have two variants, Phi-4 reasoning and Phi-4 reasoning plus. Phi-4 reasoning plus is a model that was trained to think for longer, just output longer chains of thought. And they have, it came out to 70, it beat 70 billion parameter on AIME. What else is interesting here? MIT license, context window 32K, and then they internally try to get to 64K with rope interpolation. They have structured chain of thought thinking with very basic, use GPRO as well. They claim to outperform DeepSeek R1 distilled 70 billion parameters on AIME, the math competition. They also said that they trained this model before AIME 25 came out, and they're getting 78%. Saturating AIME with reasoning is now a thing. The more you reason, the more you get on the AIME, which it still remains to be seen how much of this transforms into real-world use. The interesting thing here is generalization. They claim that gains are not limited to math. They added math problems in reinforcement learning, and they saw 10-point increase on human eval plus coding and 5 points on MMLU Pro versus base Phi-4. So generalization of RL teaching on math is also something they highlight in the paper. And then the last thing is plus answers on average 1.5 more tokens than the regular SFT, and their compares to O3 mini high. I haven't seen comparisons to Qwen for Phi. If the folks in the community want to,
I have to quickly say that when I'm talking to other people, even when they are AI companies, there's a lot that they don't even know this exists at all.
Qwen?
They have heard of DeepSeek, maybe Claude, and the Gemini, and then that's about it. Everything else is just Phi, Qwen, they don't even know. I have to explain to them. It's very good at math, and they're, do you trust it and stuff? But we've used every single model for the last 2 years. We know exactly what it can and cannot do and how to make contraptions out of it. So there's that.
I want to add, going back to Qwen just for a second, we have a comment from a friend of ours and a huge supporter of the community, Bortowski, Colin Kilty, that after what Fernando said, piggybacking off Fernando, it seems likely that by going deeper instead of wider, you end up with a smarter model that needs a bit of extra runtime data. That can be provided by search or RAG or MCP, but we'll get way better overall results if you can augment them. And we know that these models absolutely will use RAG and MCP because they've been trained on this as well. And so that's very interesting for agentic applications, for example, where you rely on external tools for a lot of the data. So maybe you need less of the world model yourself. But if you're training, going deeper, maybe you get overall like better model performance. So thank you, Colin, for the shout out, folks. Definitely give Colin Bortowski a follow.
What they mean for the audience by going deeper, it has more layers. If you open any model, the weights are just files, and the layers means like these chunks of weight on top of each other. So when you go to mixture of experts, so what they mean by wider, it means it has more experts to route to per layer. We do know from Frankenstein's and stuff that when you add more layers, the model doesn't become smarter in a way, but when you go wider, it has more knowledge. Now, this might not end up being accurate if you listen to this in the future, but it is like roughly there with a MLP. So it's they knocked it out of the park with this architectural choice. This is the first time we see a 30 billion parameter, 3 billion parameter active. I'm surprised that this worked this well.
Alrighty, moving on. I think we're going to skip, but just to let you guys know that Xiaomi released MIMO 7 billion parameter. It's a tiny MIT license model. Has some interesting things.
7B is not tiny.
Tiny, yes.
There is another coding model from JetBrains.
Oh yeah,
I saw that. Yeah, I saw it. And
It never ends.
Yeah, it just never ends. But we'll mention them. Yeah, JetBrains, there is a coding model as well. Shout out for them throwing their hat in the ring. If you guys can send me a link, I will definitely add to the show notes. Xiaomi released one, and QTI released a model that's called Helium. Helium 1, 2 billion parameters, and it has interesting evals here. They're comparing themselves to Gemma and Llama 3.2. But
wait, this one talks, right?
I don't believe so. No, this is just
the ones
QTI made Mochi, the talking model, but I believe the Helium is
emoji thing?
No, Helium is just an LLM.
Oh, it's just LLM. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
just LLM.
All right.
But I think they're doing this as a base model for the talking models as well, because I believe the previous base model for the voice was like Qwen. Folks, we're moving to big companies and APIs because we have a lot to cover there.
Like we're getting into creature territory now. Can you talk like a dolphin? Can you see me?
Speaking of talking, Qwen also released another model, Qwen 2.5 Omni. You guys remember that Qwen has an Omni model that can talk and they can listen to voice and talk? They released an update there. I guess it makes sense. But we're getting to the point where even Qwen releases multiple things a month. Qwen 2.5 Omni was also updated. Omni updated. Moving on to big companies and APIs, we have a lot to talk about.
Talks, just so people know. And you can talk on the phone too. That's a 3B that talks ends up being like 4B.
Yeah.
By the way, Omni also has image and video input at least.
And
folks, we have to move on.
Yeah, let's go.
We're moving on to big companies and APIs. There's a lot that happened this week. Now, huge model updates. There was one. So Gemini, for some reason, forgot that ThursdAI exists. Shout out to folks. They should have let us know a bit before. Gemini 2.5 Flash was released just a little bit after our live stream. So we did this in the newsletter. But Gemini 2.5 Flash is the faster, cheaper model from Google. And they obviously came out after 04 Mini and 4.5 Mini. So Gemini 2.5 was released. And I believe that it's very cheap. I don't have a lot to compare it here, but I did run reasoning. Oh, the one thing that highlighting in Gemini 2.5 Flash, it's a hybrid reasoning model, and you can in the API turn thinking on or off, and you can also specify how many tokens between 0 and like 25k. You can specify in like an API parameter how much you want it to think. If you guys remember the knob that I talked about before with reasoning models, this is the knob. Basically, you can decide how much, and based on that, you will pay different prices. So shout out to Gemini 2.5 for this great model as well. If we're talking about Google Notebook LM, AI overviews, the audio overviews of everything that you provided that sounds like a podcast, they are now multilingual. So you can have one host speaking one language and another. They have German, Spanish, Portuguese, like a bunch of other languages. I believe 50 languages. Let's talk about, okay, folks, I think it's time.
Speaking about Google, there are rumors, very strong rumors about what's going to be dropped on Google I.O.
Let's talk about Google I.O. is May 20th and 21st. I'm going to be there. I'm going to do the show live, probably. Maybe I'll do like a live stream from Google I.O. depending on the Wi-Fi. I don't have prior knowledge of what they're going to drop there, but I know that the A2A folks are going to be there. So we'll definitely cover whatever is coming. Yeah,
it'll be an ultra event.
Folks, I think while we're talking about, Google, I think we've covered everything Google. We'll cover LlamaCon in a second. I want to talk about OpenAI briefly. Before we get to the interesting news, OpenAI this week, let's do one positive thing and then everything else is not as positive. GPT4, ChatGPT will do shopping for you with the integration from Shopify. Based on everything it knows about you, it will suggest things. It could be a path for monetization for them in terms like affiliate links for shopping, because more than there is estimates that ChatGPT will get to 1 billion users by end of this year. And if they get there, there's a lot of shopping to be done there based on your interest. Imagining how much ChatGPT knows about you, probably way more than Instagram based on their algorithms, because you literally tell it and talk to it. And also many people just look for things with O3 and research. Moving on. Folks, I think it's time. I think we're gathered here today to say a few parting words for a dear friend of ours that kicked off a whole field of AI. RIP GPT4, you will be missed. OpenAI have turned off GPT4 in the dropdown. You are no longer able to chat with the model that was born on March 14th, 2023, together with ThursdAI. And the reason why we are here talking to you is GPT4. A lot of people at the time when GPT-4 came out did not realize how big of a breakthrough it is. And then quickly they realized that they can no longer go back to GPT 3.5 because it sucked. Here's our, in solace and solitude, my favorite thing to say is from Harry Potter. Your body will perish, but your spirit will go on forever. Something like this. That's it, folks. This is our wake. Any parting thoughts from the team here on the GPT-4? Any good memories? Folks in the community.
The weights. Leak the weights. Leak the weights. There is no downside.
we
Leak
need
the
to-
weights.
We
Leak.
need him for the weights because that was an achievement for humanity. I don't care what other people's opinions are. My own, that was from 3.5 to 4. That was something quite amazing. And I was working on Dr. Gupta, the first doctor on the market. And when we switched from 3.5 to 4, it was an amazing jump in like disease diagnosis, but also helping us actually code it. That was a big jump. And we need to push them a bit.
That's the saddest thing about this for me personally, because models come and go, and there will be others. But the weights of this historical model would be the perfect opportunity. We have models that are better already, and most would probably not be able to run it. But it's a historical achievement. Why wait for future historians if you could give it to the world right now and have everybody be open AI? Be open.
Redemption arc in history.
Yes.
You can just imagine the best redemption arc. Seriously.
Yes.
Speaking of this, I want to mention a new endeavor of mine that I'm vibe coding right now that I want you guys to know about and going to be live soon. I built a model graveyard, the AI model graveyard. I call it inference.RIP, stands for rest in prompt here, for LLM models that we know and love. This is not updated yet, so GPT4 here is still not showing that it's live. I would like to commemorate and have a place for the community to come and give our thoughts. Because if you guys remember, when these models come out, a lot of people are talking about the experiences they have with these models. We're celebrating every model as it's born. Like today we had the half hour about Qwen and we got excited. Many people come out with evals and then we just move on. At some point, the company behind decides to just kill off these models. I think we need a place to remember how much hype we had and how sad. GPT 4.5, by the way, is getting obfuscated very soon. That one did not live as long. And that's also very interesting to compare. So GPT 4 lived for 2 years and a month, and GPT 5 did not last nearly as long because GPT 5 is going to be obsoleted from the API and probably from the dropdown as well. So RIP GPT 4, you will be missed. Your spirit will prevail, will remember you. And with this, let's move on to the other thing that will not be missed. ChatGPT released an update that Sam Altman mentioned as glazing. Glazing specifically means just sucking up, just being your sycophantic AI approver thing with examples that are crazy. Specifically, I don't think I added examples, but I have specific examples where somebody said to ChatGPT, I woke up, I drank half a glass of water, and I did 1 push-up. And the response from ChatGPT says, whoa, you did 1 push-up, you're like Hercules, and this puts you already in the top 1% of the population. And many such examples were flooded X and flooded local Llama and ChatGPT. People decided that this is not necessarily something that they want from their AI assistant. Since ChatGPT turned on memory for all your chats, there's already a lot at stake because the models respond based on you and how you want it. It has access to a lot of your memory. The highlight from the folks at OpenAI from the blog they released before the rollback is we focused too much on short-term feedback and did not fully account for how users' interaction with ChatGPT evolve over time. And I'm assuming with memory, like evolvement over time is very interesting. There was an announcement and they mentioned sycophancy. Sycophancy is the concept of sucking up. They released a blog talking about rollback. I don't remember having a rollback ever before in ChatGPT or any AI model. We should discuss this for a little bit, at least because we have an interview soon. One of the big things here is how much this affects society and how many people come to ChatGPT for advice now instead of Google. This advice now is personalized, and something like this, like of a release where I think they mentioned both system message and model behavior. They roll back the model and the prompt message. I believe that many people got wings because of this model. Would love to hear from you. What do you think about the effects of this? This model is now being used by 500 million people, if not more, every day. And then such a haphazard release just completely changed. People don't know about this. And many people will not even know that it rolled back. People will just have this mood swing in the middle. Wolfram, I want to hear from you.
Yeah, so we see the impact this has, little changes that model versions, and it's not just a sycophancy. We could have a model that is telling people they are worthless There was some incident with the Google where someone showed where that happened. So it could swing in the other direction. And if you train a model for millions of dollars, you should take special care of the system prompt. It always looks a bit like people just throw it together. I don't know how they test it, how they evaluate it, but that is super important. The system prompt is reshaping the model that you trained. It is very important. And people have custom instructions. My custom instructions prevented me from seeing that symptom, but I'm sure that my assistant's personality has been impacted through that. And a lot of people are coming to know their assistants. If they suddenly have these mood swings, that is also concerning. People have it as well, but you can't really trust it. That is another sign why local AI, which you have on your system with your own prompts, it doesn't change. Even if the model doesn't change, a little change in the system prompt is probably not communicated, and you can't fully trust it, and it could change at any moment. So always keep that in mind. And you need benchmarks, definitely. You have to evaluate regularly and monitoring the model. That is super important if you use it for anything productive. And it's sad if people have to suffer from changes like that. I guess it happens. If they want to improve the model, they want to make it better. Engagement seems like such a nice personality, so you enjoy talking to it, but it's not always the right thing. So we have been talking about the X algorithm as well. Engagement, user time is not exactly the best thing for yourself in all situations.
I will say I had a specific chat with my girlfriend. She told me about which AI model to use, and I told her, don't use just GPT4 right now. It's stupid. Do not. Like, they're going to roll it back. But right now, and, you know, not many folks have, a lot of folks like us that follow all the news, many folks just believe that whatever they say, whatever stupid idea they come up with, whatever, there's been a bunch of threads of folks that kind of came up with the worst business ideas ever, and ChatGPT was like absolutely clapped for them and said, yeah, you should go for it, you should leave your job, you should quit it, you should just go for it. And I think that, I hope folks at OpenAI are contending with the understanding of how much impact they have on society with changes like this. We're going to talk about evals with Hamel and Shreya very soon, how much this should go into automatic evals. Like, sycophancy now should be part of the release evals to make sure that these next models will not be sycophantic and will tell you that the earth is in fact round, even though you're like a flat earther person and you believe 100% that the government conspiracy. Imagine, I saw about this, imagine somebody that believes in conspiracies and then just switches like this and just confirms everything they say and then switches back. They absolutely will see this as government intervention in the truth, right? That's how conspiracy folks are thinking. They will see, oh no, the government found out that the AI gives you the truth and now called it back. There's a danger in there, and I'm really hoping that by highlighting this issue, first of all, we'll let you know that ChatGPT was in the spirit for the past 2 weeks. If you were about to quit your job based on something that ChatGPT told you, don't. Definitely always our recommendation is try multiple models for multiple things. The fact that they rolled it back shows how important this was even for them. And we haven't seen a rollback yet.
The impact of this.
Yep.
So many people were talking to chatbots today, of course, ChatGPT, for support. This kind of, you want an advice for something, I don't know, tough conversations you need to have with someone. So you talk to ChatGPT and ask, how should you do this? And so on. And if the model just agrees with everything, it doesn't really give you good advice. It doesn't really advise you about a thing. Whatever you're saying, it's just going to say, yeah, that's a good idea, and just reaffirm whatever you think. That's not a good thing to happen. And
Nope.
Many people don't know anything about this.
Yep. I would say the one thing that I'm missing from OpenAI is an announcement to the people that this happened and some sort of understanding that this shouldn't happen. You have control of people's psyche at this point. And I don't know, like some folks give their kids access to ChatGPT for like different things. Kids have a lot of issues. They're not ready to talk with their parents. There should be a responsibility for folks to lock in and say, this model this is how it will behave. Like, humans don't change like this from one point to another. There's a responsibility on OpenAI, and hopefully they will follow up with this. Moving on, we have an interview.
I made a meme.
Folks, we have to move on super quick on the big companies and APIs before we chat with our guests for today. LlamaCon updates. We didn't mention LlamaCon. No big models from LlamaCon, but they released like a few security releases. Llama Guard 4 with text and image protection. If you are building enterprise, you need guardrails, so they released a bunch of stuff. Firewall with some prompt hacks and risky code. It's very interesting. Those are open models that they released. PromGuard 2 with jailbreak defense, and then something like a cybersec eval, which we'll talk about evals in a second. Zach confirmed thinking models are coming. That's a confirmation on Dwarkesh podcast. New Meta AI is coming with a social feed. In Meta AI, you will see if your friends have shared the AI, how your friends are using AI. Maybe OpenAI is going to go there as well. A full duplex model, which you can talk to, is in the works. Some people tested it out. It sounds amazing. The last big thing, Llama API is coming, powered by Grok and some other folks. Zach said we're not in the business of running APIs, and now they have API offer there as well. So those are the main updates from LlamaCon, I believe. And then we'll probably talk about Chatbot Arena confusion after the conversation, specifically about evals. Alrighty, folks. Now we have moved to the next section where we're going to have two guests, Hamel and Shreya. Welcome, folks. Hi there. Welcome to ThursdAI. I believe both of yours maybe first time here, at least in video form, for sure. And would love to chat with you guys. So welcome, folks. Hamel, Husain, for those who are not following the field, and Shreya, Shankar are one of the top people in the field of evaluation. I mentioned before multiple times, Weights and Biases have a tool for evaluations, and this is how I got into the field. So I'm fairly new, but you cannot be in the field of LLM evaluation without reading some of Shreya's work. Specifically, the highlight that, Hamel, I think you keep referring to as well, is who validates the validators. And we've built on top of this work as well. I would love to start by saying, first of all, welcome, folks. Let's do a short round of introduction. Hamel, how do you introduce yourself when folks ask who you are? How do you encompass that body of work?
I've been working in machine learning for over 20 years. I worked at a lot of tech companies like Airbnb and GitHub. Been working with large language models for a really long time. I'm now an independent consultant. I found quickly that people fail with on building AI applications is evals. They really struggle with that. People don't have a hard time creating prototypes, but they have a hard time creating applications that work really well. Evals were the weakest link in everyone's knowledge. And so that's what I decided to focus on that. And yeah, that's a little bit of background on me.
And you have great content on your blog as well. And the talks at AI Engineer, multiple AI Engineer conferences that we've crossed paths as well. Welcome, Shreya. Shreya, please feel free to introduce yourself and maybe give us like a little bit of like how you're involved in the field. What are you doing? Why is this a research interest of yours?
Yeah, great to be here. I don't have a nice subtitle under my name. It just says my name. I don't have LLM evals or AI evangelist. I don't know how I get that. But I am a researcher at UC Berkeley, finishing up my PhD. And I'm very interested in ML ops, specifically how do you help people engineer very reliable applications around ML and AI, now LLM models. As Hamel said, evals are the missing link here. What's very interesting is how early stage we are in evals. People get very confused thinking about evals for foundation models. But those sets of evals are completely different from the kinds of evals that people need when they're engineering applications around the foundation models. And I think there's just such a sore lack of educational content, even research. How do we go about building this end-to-end evaluation lifecycle? And I'm very excited to be studying that.
That's incredible. I saw a lot of research that came out from you and your colleagues about this to move the field forward. Let's start with, and one thing that I always remind folks on ThursdAI, I love chatting with folks that did a release this week. So you guys have 2 announcements, but you guys also released prompt evals. Would love to chat about this as well. But let's start with the difference between the benchmark we see, and we talk a lot about a lot of foundational models here. This is the bread and butter of ThursdAI. We talk about Qwen 3 release. We compare Qwen 3 based on human eval, MMLU, and AIME, and all of these computation math for reasoning models. Those are evaluating the model on a set of tasks also, but that's not necessarily the evals that you guys are hammering towards. Folks need to build their own evals, right? So maybe let's start with the difference. What is the difference?
So we think about application-centric evals. You could argue that coding is an application, but I think when you want to think about foundation model evals as people who are training the models or post-training or fine-tuning models, those kinds of evals are more or less to test for general knowledge or to test that you are able to have general knowledge, but in a domain, for example, in medicine or in law very broadly, or in coding very broadly. But when I worked with people or practitioners out in the field, right, typically they want to build a specific app around a foundation model. For example, they want to write an email assistant, or they want a chatbot over their document corpus. These are so targeted that it's not about fine-tuning a model, creating a data set for fine-tuning. It's about building the prototype and figuring out what are the failure modes you didn't really expect. Maybe the tone, the vibe was a little bit off. Maybe for certain kinds of inputs, it always hallucinates the entity extraction. I see this quite a bit. So there's always these bespoke failure modes that no one would care about testing in a foundation model eval because it's so specific to your use case. But AI application developers need to be doing this. And that's where a lot of our evals work focuses.
And Hamel, sending it back to you, because many folks, when they choose which model to use in production, some people just string replace the new model and YOLO to production. We've seen that this is not always the best use case. We've seen reasoning models, for example, that are math and code, actually perform worse based on the same prompts. Have you seen this from your work with the company? What is your recommendation? Obviously building evals, but what is your main recommendation there? And where's the delta between AI developers just looking at general evals to implementing their own stuff?
Yeah, I think people take that same mentality of foundation model benchmarks and try to apply it to evals. And the way they try to do that is use off-the-shelf metrics like hallucination score, toxicity score, the conciseness score. You can go to your favorite LLM eval tool provider and they will basically give you these metrics off the shelf. And people try to apply that. Be like, okay, I've done it. Evals, I'm done. I did my evals. I ate my vegetables and I'm fine. But the reality is that stuff doesn't really work and it's very misleading and actually wastes a lot of time and is confusing because it's not specific enough to your application. The applications that work really well design metrics in evals that are very grounded in their failure modes. That also is important because there's so many things you could eval. There's almost infinite surface area. And it's really important to prioritize what your failure modes are. The generic metrics can be useful in very skilled hands. It can help you find failures, but you have to use them in a very specific way. You can't just apply them and take the number at face value. Maybe, for example, if you're using hallucination score, okay, use that hallucination score and see if you can help it rank order possible hallucinations. Then dig into it and see what's going on. You may end up figuring out a different kind of metric or a different kind of eval or really dialing it in for you. Most people don't do that. That's an advanced kind of move.
What else do most people don't do?
Yeah. So it all goes back to the famous the thing that I love to repeat is looking at your data. It all just goes back into looking at your data, no matter what you're doing, any activity you're doing. That's the antidote to almost all problems. Hey, you can design your own, customize evals. How do you do that? You have to look at the data.
I think it's very important to highlight why you guys are specifically repeating this sentence all the time. We're also in the business of showing people the data via tools, and we've a lot of developers look at what happens with the LLM every time they develop locally, and then they put it on there, and then they continue to the next feature or maybe something else, and they don't get the feeling of what happens on the LLM on production for the users. A very good example of this, but maybe on a huger scale, is the glazing thing with ChatGPT that we just talked about before you guys came on, where it was so bad that the community reacted completely and they rolled back the whole thing. At some point, at some scale, looking at your data, it means also listening to your users. For many small developers, they just don't play with their tools on their own. I want to move on. Shreya, you guys have a release called Prompt Evals. Could you tell us a little bit about this? It's an archive and also on Hugging Face.
Yeah, so this is a year-long effort, collaboration with LangChain to really understand what kinds of evals developers care about. What are the bespoke evals that Hamel and I have been talking about? Are there patterns to them at scale? LangChain has a bunch of open source tools, the Prompt Hub being one of them. We went through all of these, tried to develop taxonomies of failure modes, and develop a bunch of binary evaluations around these prompts. For me, the biggest takeaway was how different these were from the foundation model evals in general. Foundation model evals are like the ceiling, the North Star that we strive to do. We purposely build very hard benchmarks, live code getting saturated, but it's a different paradigm from when you're in production. You want instruction following, the model to do what is said in the prompt, plus some other thing it should infer. Building benchmarks around this is very different. You're hoping to get 90+% accuracy. It's a very different paradigm, and I'm hopeful that this kind of research or exposing what developers want moves the needle towards that.
I think you mentioned a very interesting point that I haven't internalized fully. When a new benchmark like MMLU comes out, the ML researchers in these labs get excited. They're like, oh yeah, new hill to climb. This is the whole point.
Yes.
Whereas for evals, that's not the point. You want to make sure that your thing works as
You
as
already
it worked
climbed
yesterday.
that hill. Yes, it's like software in that sense. And I think what's also interesting is the benchmark gaming that happens in ML all the time. The most recent thing being Chatbot Arena. You don't want that phenomenon happening in your org where you're trying to push out random changes just to game your own static benchmark. That's terrible.
An additional thing, and Hamel, this is going to go to you as well. You mentioned in the beginning people don't do this, and some of it is because people don't know how to do this. There's not a lot of content. You guys are great, and the content for this, Shreya, who validates the validator, showed specifically that even preferences change while people evaluate. Like you need to start with manual scoring and manual humans as a judge to make sure that you have some sort of baseline to compare to, and then maybe you can extrapolate. But even that changes over time, and that's what the who validates the validator showed, a seminal paper in this field that people should definitely check. They may have built an LLM judge to do something, and this judge doesn't perform as well. Meta evaluation is important. There's a whole bunch of stuff in this field, and it's a fairly complex field. After diving into this, I'm looking at your stuff, reading your papers. It's a very complex field, and you guys are doing great work at making this a little bit less complex. Hamel, so let's talk about how you're doing this with the upcoming course.
Yeah, so with the upcoming course, we're going to go really deep inside. How do you actually go through the step-by-step process of looking at your data properly? So looking at data, it sounds like it's easy. You just open your eyes and you're done. No, you have to do some data analysis and put your data science thinking hat on, do some detective work in terms of how do you analyze your traces? How do you look at those traces? How do you assess out failures? Starting with error analysis, going up to the different kinds of evals, how to write them, how to check them, how to make sure they're aligned with human beings, cover architecture specific evals. What do you think about doing RAG? What do you think about with agents? How do you optimize costs? Shreya is actually writing a very detailed book.
I'm really excited.
Draft.
I've been reading it with great enthusiasm. It's like a captivating book.
Which is to accompany the course, right?
And it goes into a lot of detail. Okay, how do you do this? It is a treatise that compiles a lot of information in one place. It's very exciting and is going to help prepare students when they're in the course. We'll have reading that they will do so that when they show up to a lecture, we can give them a very rich lecture.
I'm excited for this. I would just say you guys reached out, Hamel. I'm also a guest speaker at the course somewhere in June. There's going to be a talk of mine as well. I'm looking forward to learn more because even though this is part of my job at Weights and Biases, talk about evals, and we have Weave, which is like the evaluation toolkit. There's a lot of things happening and changing. The ways that people apply this, they have lessons, they come and they talk about those lessons. I think it's very important to keep up to date. So absolutely recommend folks register. Hamel was very gracious in giving us a ThursdAI discount, 35% off for ThursdAI listeners if you add ThursdAI at the course. It's really worth your time if you're working in any place that incorporates AI, which is every place right now. It's really hard to find a company that's not trying to add LLM juice somewhere. And as you guys talk about, it's not very easy to do with confidence. This is the highlight of this work. Anything else that I've missed that you guys want to highlight before we move on?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you
I'm
so
always
much.
excited about evals.
Absolutely. I need to get more folks excited because there's the foundational stuff and people get excited, but then they try to apply them locally and need to see how these things work in production with reliability. You guys are absolutely the top experts in this field. Don't matter who you ask. There's a group that all of you are in the group chat with, but you two are definitely the ones I'm excited to have folks learn from. I'm very happy to be a guest speaker in the course as well. Thank you, Hamel. Thank you, Shreya, for coming up. We'll add the links to the show notes. Definitely check it out. Thank you guys for coming up as we move on to the next thing.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. All right, and bringing back our co-hosts here. This was Hamel, Husain, and Shreya Shankar, the two leaders in evals. I think we're moving on, folks.
Excellent AI engineer course before it was with Swix. So we should post it. I think it was like $500, but then they made it available for free after some time. You should do one of those full stack courses, even the older ones from Full Stack on YouTube. That actually helped me a lot, and they're still very relevant today.
So you're referring to Hamel's AI engineering course, like a big one that became
the big one,
a
yeah,
conference.
yeah.
Weekend conference, yeah, absolutely. Courses like Hamel spends a lot of time on courses, very great, high signal. Moving on, I'll just add that this week's buzz, the most interesting thing about Weights and Biases this week is I have two announcements for you. I'm very excited to announce this super quick because we have a hackathon that's coming up. We call it Weave Hacks. Weave Hacks is a hackathon that we're organizing by ourselves with a bunch of sponsors, friends from the community. And the focus of this hackathon is agent protocols. MCP is everywhere right now. We just talked about MCP previously in the show. A2A, we had Todd Segel from the A2A team at Google, is a new upcoming protocol for agent collaboration and agent conversations. We want you to build with them. We want to give you the space in our great office in San Francisco to come and just hack and chat with the folks who are building these protocols. So I'm very proud to announce that Google Cloud is sponsoring this hackathon with us. We have up to 15K prizes. I will just say, first, I think on the pod, I haven't mentioned this anywhere, one of the top prizes is a Unitary robot dog that I've ordered and is now coming. So you'll be able to program this. It's going to run around the office, bring snacks, do all kinds of stuff. And if you put an agent on it and that agent will communicate via A2A with something, that's going to be a winning thing. So we're probably going to open up the framework. I'm very excited because I got to book the robot dog and then I got to expense it. And then in the expense, I said, I'm booking this robot dog for a hackathon. And I was very excited about the type of work that I'm able to do with weights and biases. Who can expense a robot dog? That's super cool. I will say that for next hackathon, we're probably going to have a humanoid robot. The only reason why we didn't get a humanoid is because the lead time on Unitary is ridiculous. But our next hackathon is going to have a walking humanoid doing all kinds of things. We're also going to have folks from the A2A protocol at Google come and you'll be able to talk to them, share concerns, give feedback, etc. So I'm really like, in addition to incredible judges that I haven't confirmed yet, those are some cool people that you want to know and meet in the community that love weights and biases. So please, you're more than welcome to Weave Hacks May 17th and 18th. Please join us in San Francisco. If you're looking for a reason to look at the Golden Gate Bridge, this is your reason. I will be there. I'll give you high fives as well. And I think the hackathon is going to be super cool. That's number one. Number two, our fully connected, our General Weights and Biases conference, a big one. The 2-day conference is coming to San Francisco as well. I will put it in the show notes. It's fullyconnected.com, and we're having incredible speakers. Last year, we had Joe Spizak, head of Meta Llama, announced Llama 3 on stage. We're looking for more announcements, but absolutely welcome to fly for that. I'm sure that meeting other ML practitioners that use weights and biases and listening, tuning into how people use, it's not only about Weave, it's about everything. That's fully connected. That comes to San Francisco very soon, and the tickets are out, and we'll try to get you a discount for the next one. Hackathon is free to participate. As I always say, this ThursdAI is proudly sponsored by Weights and Biases. You should definitely give Weave a try, our observability and LLM evaluation toolkit. Everything that we've talked with Hamel, Husain, and Shreya, Shankar, Weave supports in a beautiful visual form. As you've seen before, when we evaluated Qwen, I used Weave for all my evaluations myself as well. So definitely give Weave a try. This has been this week's Buzz, and now let's move on to the LMArena thing. Alrighty, we're back, and we should talk about LMArena thing. Hamel, if you want to come up to chat with us, because I think it's evals related. Folks, as when a new model comes out, we are giving you vibe stuff, and we're telling you, hey, this model is this. Wolfram, we brought you on because you were known in the local Llama community as the evaluator. I think AI evaluator is actually a title of yours, and we try to bring you the vibes. A lot of what we used to rely on, or for the longest time, is LMArena. LMArena researchers, they built a way for people to just see two models responding to the same chat and select their preference. And then they had exploded in popularity for the past, as long as we've been running with ThursdAI. And recently they came under fire. Specifically, I remember when Meta Llama 4 released Maverick, and there was a whole thing that we talked to you about where kind of the unreleased model shot up to the top of the charts, and then Maverick released and place 37 or something. That's number one. Number two, Claude 3.7, which we all know slaps. The vibes on Claude 3.7 is incredible. Sometimes it goes too much. Sometimes it builds you a whole backend when you're not asking for it. But generally, the vibes for 3.7 are great. And people love this model. It's also placed 25 on LMArena. And that doesn't... There was a very interesting delta between what we feel like and what LMArena shows. And LMArena supposedly have an ELO score and enough people voting on these models. LMArena also has the service that they provide the bigger labs to run their models incognito, and we always talk about this. Nisten is like we're trying to like figure out which model is which. That they run this model behind the scenes, and the folks vote for it without knowing which model it is to not obscure votes. Here comes this paper called Leaderboard Illusion from folks mainly in Cohere and some other folks as well, that claims that the way the arena was set up is actually favoring bigger companies. So let's talk about this. Who wants to go first with some thoughts?
I think we all know benchmarks are broken, but the reason it all works out in the end is because you can combine the vibe checking with what people are actually doing, with the LMArena scores, and with actual benchmarks that people run. I don't think it's necessarily a bad indicator. We're aware that they can just run any API they want, and we've made accusations here and there, and it becomes a bit of a thing to game the arena. Sometimes it can affect how the model is done, but at the end of the day, it is one more metric that you can use productively. I do think that the arena does actually correspond pretty okay towards what the models can do. There are outliers. For example, Sonnet scores very poorly, and people feel like that's the best, but it's not that far off from what it is. The research from Cohere's team, those are reputable, seasoned people in AI ML that have been there for 5-6 years. Those are all valid points. We should improve it, but it doesn't mean it is completely broken or completely useless or anything like that.
Yep. I think they're highlighting multiple things here, and we should discuss. Hamel, would love to hear your thoughts about this. Distorted playing field. And they have undisclosed private testing practices that they benefit bigger providers. Specifically, this threw me off. At an extreme, we identified 27 private LM variants tested by Meta in the lead up to the Llama 4 release. 27 private LMs. Meta is basically using this. I actually want to know whether or not they're supporting LMArena. I don't know this. And then they specifically say both these policies lead to large data access asymmetries over time. Providers like Google and OpenAI have received an estimated 20% of all data in the arena. Combined 83 open weights models have only received an estimated 30% of the total data. There is some sort of data feedback. And what are these companies doing with this feedback?
So I use the arena a lot. I don't know many others that use it a lot, just so that I can at least discern what the models do. Most people see the answers and then they just vote. Or maybe you do 2 or 3 turns and then that's about it. That's a hard way to judge it. So it tends to favor a lot for those one-shot questions. If you keep training the model to do better at one-shot, you do actually get a better model, but it's not necessarily representative of the day-to-day use that people are going to do.
I'll highlight this. We show that access to Chatbot Arena data yields substantial benefits. Even limited additional data can result in relative performance gains of up to 112% of arena distribution. Folks have started going directly to OpenRouter. OpenAI went directly to OpenRouter instead of LMArena for the latest releases. So some kind of changes in how folks are receiving this effort.
And OpenAI is doing the same. You can rate responses, and sometimes you get 2 at the same time and have to pick one. So that is their UI. So
just that the data that OpenAI is getting in their UI is very different than the data that is appearing in the arena. Because if the data from the arena allows them to have such a big jump, that means there's something to overfit on. There's something specific about the arena population that is different, potentially.
Where are the questions coming from in the arena? If I may dig into this subject more, Alex, but like where the questions are coming from? Are they unique? Where,
for
like,
users? They're just like what?
Yeah, in the arena. I just want to understand. Let's say that I overfit the arena to the end. Where the questions are, like where exactly is the leak? That's what I'm trying to understand. Because if you're going to take OpenAI's data and overfit it to the end, you're going to get a really good model. You're not going to get an overfitted model.
I think in the arena, a lot of people are just asking the trick questions to see which model answers them, how many R's are in strawberry and stuff like that. As soon as on Reddit a new trick questions comes up, people use it in the arena to check if the model has it. It gets in the training data that way. And yeah, then it answers that correctly. So you always have to make your own private benchmark in the end. Sure.
We should mention the importance of evaluating stuff. LMArena does some evaluations, but then the folks gave them recommendations of how to solve this. So it's not like it's a scathing point, Arena is bad. It's just like literally they showed like multiple things of how to solve this, including showing a spotlight on the fact that the big companies get like data back as well. They talk about pre-release training and the community. They gave some answers, pointed out some factual errors from this paper, but basically the damage potentially has been done already, because like when we know in the open source community, when people have a tendency to not like bigger labs generally and focus on open source because of several things that happened this week. For example, the glazing incident. Like you said, if you're hosting your own models, glazing will not happen to you unless you have a continuously fine-tuning thing and you release. If you're hosting your models and you're checkpointed, that will not happen ever. And OpenAI will just play with the prompts to see what works, what doesn't work.
With the glazing, what's wrong with the evals? Or like maybe the annotations they're getting are just that bad. Maybe we're just like a lot of mid people using ChatGPT that like glazing.
A few things specific about glazing. Hamel, before we came in, we chatted about this, and they had an AMA, and there's a combination of looking for short-term enjoyment, also the long-term memory that knows everything that you saw and tries to fit whatever you want. It's going to be very interesting. I don't think we got the clear answer of what exactly went in the last two releases that they rolled back. We know some prompt, and people like Pliny the Prompter, Pliny the Liberator have shown us the differences in prompt. The differences are tiny. I wouldn't look at this and consider it models. I think combination with a bunch of other stuff added some training in there. I think that this is it on the leaderboard with Nisten. Arena is still important. They have the style confirmation. They have the web dev arena on which Claude 3.7 absolutely slaps and the top as well. They do a lot of community effort. We'd love to have them here as well. I hope that they learn from this feedback and understand that they also have a responsibility towards the community to like not overfit to bigger labs and present like open weighted models as well. Great job from Cohere pointing this finger. I think that's it for the bigger companies and APIs, unless we have breaking news. We did have breaking news where Claude is now MCP on Cloud AI, which is dope. I think that's pretty much it on the big companies and APIs. We're moving on because in the interest of time, we're coming up on 2 hours. I would love to chat about the Runway references thing. I know that this is one reason why we do video, because we could talk about everything in a radio form, but a lot of the latest upgrades in AI is video based. So I really want to like showcase some of the incredible stuff that Runway is doing. We know that there's models. Let me just try to open this link. There's a lot of video models that we've covered from just multiple labs. Kling came out with Kling 0.2 and a bunch of stuff. Runway has been around for a while, from Gen 1, Gen 2, and now Gen 4 has upgraded with this thing called references. References allow you to specify what you want in next frames. It's the dream for content creators. So I'm going to show a few examples here. They claim that like Runway references is a time machine. They picked a random frame. This specific person picked a random frame from 90s sitcom and then returned a still frame from a scene of 10 minutes ago. And these are the results. You can see scene consistency and character consistency. This is incredible. If you think about how diffusion works generally with like seed or something, that's like really hard to get this consistency level. And then you can generate these things, the consistency of the couch, you can see. The details are not 100% perfect, but the consistency of the couch, the theme, the fridge is blue. There's a bunch of stuff. I want to show a video. You can get consistency of faces across scenes, which is great for scene building. I think one of the ways that we detect whether or not the video is AI generated is whether or not the face changes from scene to scene. And that, folks, by the end of this year, I believe is going to go away. I believe that no longer we'll be able to judge a video, whether or not it's AI generated or not, based on whether or not the face changed subtly from scene to scene because of things like consistency. Quite something. I think this is the release video, and I'll show it a little bit because I think it's super cool. Incredible release from Runway. Continuous stream of updates in AI video generation, and shout out to Runway for this. This is now available for everyone. It's not only on the premium tier, so super cool for consistency, for character consistency as well. What else do we have in AI news? Any feedback on this, Wolf, from anything that you would like to add? I know that sometimes we chat about video stuff as well. Looks like Nistan dropped. Go ahead, Wolfram.
It's a very cool model. I have been experimenting with it, and I will upload some videos later. But the consistency is amazing, though. What we have seen with OpenAI's image creation, where you can just give it 2 images and say combine them. Now you can do that with video. I wonder if Sora can do it as well. Has anyone tried?
Sora cannot do it. The Sora that we have cannot do it. I'm pretty sure that OpenAI has a Sora inside that absolutely does this. I think that I've even seen leaks of Sora 2 or something, but those are only leaks, and we haven't seen them as well.
I just can't follow. There's so many. Every
That's
week,
why.
like every week you get, this is the best model for video. And then,
Yep.
okay, I get it. Then a week later, like 2 different others. These are the
It
best
changes.
videos. Yeah, you just, I just don't know which is the best at the moment. They all look amazing. I've seen every week an amazing model, and I'm not sure which one is better. You really need to compare a video, the same prompt, just to make sure, and it's very hard. But
It's
it's
very
amazing.
hard.
It's moving
I think it's
so
harder
fast.
than. I agree with you. I think it's harder than evals on LLMs. Just doing evals on video. How would you even do this? LLM as a judge, maybe. It's a hard field. Another hard field, but a little bit easier, is the image diffusion models. There's one update I want to give you there. Hydream was released, and Hydream is this model on Hugging Face from company, Hydream AI. They released Hydream E1 in full, and they have the screenshot specifically focusing on converting to Ghibli style, which we know the Ghiblification from GPT image generation came. They have a bunch of examples. This model, I believe, is Apache 2 license, and you can use it for a bunch of stuff. Vivago.ai is the company, and you can use this model online. They released full weights for this. If you go to artificial analysis, which we mentioned, let me just open this in a way that I can
Speaking
show
of
stuff to
Hugging
you.
Face,
Yeah.
they offer 0 GPU 2 now, which basically means they offer H100s.
Wait, really? Zero GPU upgraded? That's incredible. So the thing I wanted to show is that we talk about LMArena for vibes, but another resource that I love is artificial analysis, and they also have language models and image and speech models. So text to image, if you look at the image arena, which is very similar to LMArena. They show you 2 pictures, you decide. Hydream is up there. Let's look at Hydream. Hydream I1 Dev, which is not the model that we just talked about, is number 4 above Google Imagen and just a little bit below Recraft. This is a great thing for you to explore if you're interested in latest and greatest in models. I believe that they have video models as well. Do they have a leaderboard? Yeah, they have a leaderboard.
The thing about this is that the model can generate the best images possible, but the best models, like what sets GPT-4 apart, is that it follows the prompt better than other image generation models. You can give it very specific instructions in text, and you put this human here, and it stands on this and so on, like many tiny details, and it actually makes them. This is, for example, in Midjourney, which is unbelievably good image generation model as well. You can't control it to the same extent as GPT-4. So I don't know. Maybe this is what the evals are checking, but I'm just saying that it might be pretty hard to judge.
Yeah, when you see 2 images and you select your preference, that's different from you're playing with the model. Google released native image generation as well. Like we knew that they have this capability, but now inside Gemini, you can have native image generation editing as well. They added this week. So much happening that I didn't even add this to the show notes. Just remembered another thing that happened. It's really hard to judge and build those evals as well, where people just judge on 2 things. Folks, I think we're coming to the end of the show. We were able to cover most of the stuff we wanted to, including an interview with 2 great folks in evaluation. You should definitely check that out if you're building anything with AI and want reliability. The show is proudly sponsored by Weights and Bias and have been since the beginning. And this is why the show continues to happen. And we have a tool called Weave, and you should definitely give it a try. If you're interested in building your application reliant way, we're going to give you the tools to do so. We just released a bunch of new eval APIs that I would love to chat about next week as well. With that said, I think the last thing that we didn't get to, and I think we'll skip in interest of time, is OpenPipe. But OpenPipe is a platform for fine-tuning models. We've been increasingly moving into reinforcement learning fine-tuning as well. And they released an open source RL-trained email research agent called ART-E, and they are claiming state-of-the-art there. Percentage of questions answered correctly on their benchmark is 96, which is pretty cool. It's based on Qwen 2.514b. So as Nistan previously said, Qwen absolutely was the workhorse of the fine-tuning community, and I'm very excited to see what happens with Qwen 3. I want to shout out our friend of the pod, Junyang Lin, who woke up very late and stayed up, but we weren't able to accommodate him on the show, unfortunately, because it was after we already covered. Junyang was almost here. Shout out to Qwen team for the incredible release this week. Absolutely the highlight for most of us. One comment from me is that if you trust your life decisions to an AI, make sure to have a second opinion, potentially from another AI, but also maybe a human. Incidents like the last 2 weeks showed us that, especially I am taken from myself here, trust more and more of my decisions. I have a button on my phone. As you click it, ChatGPT comes up in voice mode, and I just talk to it about how long do I boil an egg for, which is embarrassing in retrospect. Many of us don't go to therapists every week or want to afford this, ChatGPT and tools like Oren from Elysian Labs, they are increasingly participating in our lives, in decision making, in thinking about things. And I think it's incredible. As an AI evangelist, I think it's incredible that we have this tool. People who didn't even think about therapy now can have access to something that's like therapeutic and can help them like live their lives better. I think it's incredible. However, with this comes the risk of the platforms doing what they want. Specifically, I don't think that OpenAI had bad intentions in releasing this for engagement. I absolutely don't think so.
No.
However, I don't think that Zuck came up one day and said, hey, we're going to buy Instagram and then we're going to ruin lives of 12-year-olds everywhere for a decade. I don't think that these things come with intention, but this is sometimes the outcome. As AI evangelist, it's important for me to highlight the potential risk of these things and remind you guys that if you're getting very hypey responses like, yeah, you should go for it, leave your job and do the business that you want. If you want to sell farts in a jar, do not. Go get a second opinion. In everything you do with AI, like preparing taxes, open up multiple models and run through them together and then see where it shakes out. And then also don't forget to talk to a friend that's human. I think it's very important as well. Do not stop thinking for yourself. Critical thinking is very important. Folks, thank you so much for joining ThursdAI. It's a pleasure of ours to be here every week, to give you the news, to follow this. Without the community, we're now at exactly like 1,000 listeners this week. Without this community, we didn't have the incentive to also follow up as well. I think it's great for us. Thank you. A huge thank you for our guests, Shreya, Shankar, and Hamel Husain for coming in. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in from week to week, for commenting, for giving feedback, for telling us about breaking news. If you missed any part of the show, you can find everything in ThursdAI.news, the newsletter and the podcast. We just recently went over 100 episodes. Thank you, Wolfram, for co-hosting, Yam as well. And Nistan was here. Thank you for the community. We'll see you here next week, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.